Where are we heading today?
We are headed back to Southeast Michigan. There's another 4 state parks / recreation areas that we're going to visit today, all within a relatively short amount of space miles from each other. So I can't remember exactly the name of them all off head. I know Dodge number 4 is one of them, and we'll explain a little bit later what that means. But we're excited to take you along for a ride with us today as we visit a few more state parks. Hey again, we made our sandwiches and packed our lunch, and now we are in the car on the way to Southeast Michigan. As I said before, we're going to be visiting 4 state parks today: Highland, Proud Lake, Pontiac, and Dodge number 4. Welcome to the Highland State Recreation Area. This is the first stop on our 4 state park tour today, and as you might be able to hear, it's a little noisy. We're right by M59, so definitely an urban park. I definitely think this is one of those parks where, even though it's right off a busy road and it's super, super loud, once you get into the park, it'll be quiet. And you'll kind of feel like you're in a different world and off by yourself. So let's go find out. It looks like there's a lot to see here. If you're definitely into history, there's a couple different places related to the fords that you can go to: the lodge and carriage house, the farm, an old barn. So I guess we're going to drive down and see what we can see at some of those places, as well as go check out the natural area, which apparently is also a national natural landmark. So that's cool. I didn't know that we had that as part of this. So being on the National Registry is kind of cool. So I was just reading the other day about Genevieve Gillette as part of Women's History Month. And so it's actually kind of exciting to get here today and realize that she was a major force behind Haven Hill and where we're standing today. So that's really cool. Genevieve was way ahead of her time. She wanted to be a landscape architect, but in the 1920s, that was a man's profession. And I remember reading about her that even after she went to school and then went to Chicago to work with this noted architect whose name's Jens Jensen, she never really actually got to do her craft right away. Eventually she did, and she became a driving force between establishing a lot of the natural areas in the state of Michigan. She worked here with Edsel Ford to design Haven Hill, which is really cool. And then after he passed away, she helped the state of Michigan acquire the land here to help preserve it for, eternity. What I had found was really cool is if you ever go to PJ Hoffmaster State Park, which we will be going to at some point, the nature center there is named after her, and it's the Gillette Nature Center. I actually never knew that until recently, why it was named, or who it was named for. So it's just really cool. There's a lot of history kind of coming together. And when you look at Genevieve's living legacy, all the different state parks that she was responsible for in terms of helping with their architecture of the landscape, laying it out, and not only just making sure that they looked really cool, but also helping preserve them for future generations.
Isn't that the same map we were just looking at?
Yes, but it does make more sense when we actually have the number, so I know where on the map that we are. So we're starting at 28, and theoretically we're going from 4 to 5 to 7. I guess we'll see what happens.
The critters are out.
Oh, the critters are out, yeah. And see what I mean about once we got away from the highway noise or even just, I guess, the state road noise, you're definitely out in nature. You'd never know that there was a big state highway just a, quarter mile away from here. Frogs and birds and all sorts of little chirpers are out today.
A lot of times when you're out on trails, there's good markers. Sometimes there's not such good markers. I did get a little confused when we started out on number 4, and we were headed for number 28. And then we got to an intersection, and now it's all letters.
There's also a horsey, which means we're not on the right trail.
So that means there are equestrian trails out here too.
Yes. And yeah, it's a shared pathway. So there are equestrian trails, there are hiking trails. The hikers can go on the equestrian trails, but the horses cannot go on the hiking trail. So in other words, we just need to go back down like 50 feet and get back on the hiking trail.
So you go back to the people trail, because apparently we're on the horse trail, and we're not horses. Hey, look, this post has a person on it. This must be the people trail. If you recall, when I did the hike in Fort Custer Recreation Area, one of the things I pointed out was it had a great trail system in terms of markings. The blazes were in great shape. They were easy to find, easy to see. That's not the case here. I'm
just annoyed now.
We have found markers,
right.
But we're not where we thought we were.
No, because remember I said we were going to go from 28 to 4 to 5. And then we came across a horse trail, and we came across letters and a little sign that said, person walking. So we followed the person walking.
Right, and you made fun of me because I ended up on the horse trail by mistake, but it wasn't just me.
Apparently we were supposed to go that way, but it wasn't marked. So now we're way over here on numbers that weren't where we were supposed to be. So we're going to go somewhere else now.
Well, so basically we'll just do a little backtracking, and we'll head back up the little trail that we were on and go back to an intersection and see if we can get pointed in the right direction again.
It was just frustrating that when you came to an intersection, there was no marker. It literally just had a guy walking, but didn't give you numbers or where you were or anything.
So, note to the state, when you have these kind of locations, step up your game on trail markings. So we're back on the main trail where we're supposed to be. I guess
we don't know that for sure yet. We still haven't seen a marker.
Okay, but it appears to be more where we're supposed to be. The little hiking dude on the trail marker that we followed earlier, right? That was actually a nice little trail. I enjoy those kind of narrow.
Oh, it was super cute.
Narrow trails through the woods. This is kind of a bigger path.
Which is why I thought it was a horse trail and we weren't going down it.
Although this is the opposite direction from where we saw the horse markers, right? But this would still be a trail they could go on?
I don't know.
This is the problem.
This is the problem.
Hey, look, we found 5. And we were supposed to be going 28 to 4 to 5.
So what we discovered is 4 is missing, which is 4 is where we got lost and went the wrong way and then came back and went the other way and found the horses. But anyway, I guess we're where we're supposed to be now. So now we're going to go find the historic Haven Hill site. I don't know what that is. We'll let you know when we get there. Well, unfortunately, it's time for us to leave this park and head to our next adventure. This was awesome, but with 5,900 acres, there's a lot to see and do here, and there's just no way we were ever going to see it all today, especially when we had no idea what was here and how much cool history there was to find.
Yeah, 5,900 acres is a lot when you start trying to walk through it. But this is definitely a place I would come back to.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you should come here whenever you get a chance. There is a campground here. It is equestrian only until May 20th, if we understood the way they had this sign.
Word, yeah.
The sign was worded kind of oddly, but we think that's what it means. And then it's open to everybody. Again, equestrians don't have that many places to go. So if you see that it's filling up with people that have horses, maybe let them have that campground. But if you get a chance to camp here, you could easily spend a weekend checking this place out.
Well, you just have to remember that as far as I'm understanding, it is a rustic campground. We will verify that, but if it's anything like the rustic ones we saw last weekend, it's literally just a place to camp, a fire pit, a picnic table, and usually an outhouse and a hand pump. But we can confirm that for you.
One of the things, though, that I think you could spend a lot of time doing here is just wandering around the historic part of it, which is what's left of the Haven Hill estate from the Etzel Ford family. And I know you were a little frustrated because we got here and we found it, and it wasn't on the website for the DNR, and it wasn't really identified anywhere for us.
No, and if I'd known that, we probably would have planned that this park would have been either a whole day park or just budgeted more time, because once we got around, I mean, we love history. So of course I'm going to read every sign that there is and go snoop around and look at everything. But the fact that this wasn't on the website at all was just frustrating, because it's such a bummer that if you didn't know that, you might skip this park because you'd be like, oh, it's just another trail. So it is a really cool place to see. I'm glad that they were able to preserve it here, and I'm hoping that we were going to be able to come back here so that we can finish checking out the rest of it.
Welcome to the Proud Lake State Recreation Area. It's the second stop on our trek today. We actually found the Proud Lake campground first, which is not directly connected to the rest of the park. You have to go out on the main roads and kind of around the recreation area itself to get to the headquarters and to the rest of the park. But let's head on inside and see what we can find. The Proud Lake Recreation Area is located on the Huron River in Oakland County. State says that it has 20 miles of trails here, and it covers what they consider to be several diverse habitats. So basically what you're going to see in here is dependent upon the time of year that you are here, like many of the trails. But it is open during the winter for skiing. There's 6 miles of hiking and ski trails that are open. And then there are 9 miles of bridle and biking trails that are available, again, depending on the season. Proud Lake is a good-sized state park, and I think we said earlier 20 miles of trails, but in this park in particular, it seems like it's more divided than in other parks. It's spread out among the 4,700 acres, but they kind of put all of the biking and bridle trails on one side of the park, and people hiking trails on the other side. There's a little bit of overlap, but they did seem to divide it up in this park more than they usually do. And maybe it has something to do with the terrain around here.
I was just going to say that it might have to do with geography in terms of right now we're walking through a pretty good forest and some marshland. So I guess I don't know what would be on the other side where the equestrian side would be.
This recreation area was open to the public back in 1944. Apparently, it had been owned by a number of different farmers throughout the 1800s. And one of those families was the Proud family, which is what Proud Lake Recreation Area is named for. There are a number of different types of trails in the Proud Lake Recreation Area. And one thing to keep in mind is that the different trails are used for different things, and they're not quite as multi-use as you'll find in some other parks. So, for example, there's a trail that takes you out to a bridge they use for trout fishing at certain times of the year, and that is marked as no bikes allowed.
One of the cool things coming here in April is that the trout are on the move. I honestly don't really know much about trout or trout season, but apparently it's a thing right now, and there's a lot of cool big ones down in the water. If you do want to come here, you can catch them between April 1st and the last weekend in April, but it is catch and release only. And then from the end of April until mid-September is normal state fishing regulations, whatever those are. If you're into fishing, I guess you know that and you could look that up. I only ever catch and release anyway, so I guess it doesn't really matter to me.
Sometimes you have to visit a place and find things that you didn't even know existed. For example, apparently, here at Proud Lake Recreation Area, there is a portage point for the Huron River Water Trail, which is part of the National Water Trail System. Once you make it over this portage, you are about 103 miles, not quite 103 miles, to Lake Erie.
One thing that we finally figured out that we wanted to share with you is why there's a difference between a state park and a state recreation area. I finally had to call and ask somebody at the DNR just because we couldn't figure it out. And really the only difference is that a state park is closed to hunting unless posted open, and a state recreation area is open to hunting unless posted closed. And what I did also learn was that there are no state recreation areas north of Bay City. They all seem to be a very southern Michigan thing. It's just the way they were designated. No real particular reason, but that's sort of how it goes. So in this particular case, we are at a state recreation area that is open to hunting. There are during certain seasons, of course, but some of the trails, as you'll see on the sign here, do pass through land that at certain points of the year would be open to hunting. So you have to make sure that, I guess, you're wearing your safety hunter orange, you're just being aware of your surroundings, and, you know, keeping an eye out for what's going on.
The campground here seemed nice. It was nice to see some people already starting to use it. It's mid-April, so.
Yeah, just like we mentioned last week, it's nice to see people finally out and about since the snow is gone. It's a little bit colder this weekend, if you've noticed that we're back in long sleeves and vests again, but hey, at least there's no snow, so quite a few people out camping this weekend.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting at that campground, though, they essentially kind of built it into a hill, it looks like, because you have 1 or 2 rows of campers up like above
here,
another row.
Well, they're built on, the campground's on a lake, so you've got a few sites that nobody's directly on the lake, but a few kind of right along. And then, yeah, they went up the hill, so then the second loop of the campground is overlooking the other section, I guess. But still back-to-back sites. So there's not a whole lot of privacy.
Yeah, the other thing too is depending on what sites you're in, some looked a lot smaller than others, and I think it's just based on where they had to kind of fit them in. And you also have to look for ones that are a little more level depending on what your rig is, or if you're in a tent and maybe don't care as much or whatever. But it's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at the sites that are available.
But nice modern camp or modern bathrooms and just a pretty good sized campground layout in general, I think.
We're going to wrap up our time here at Proud Lake Recreation Area for today, but there's a lot to do here, so you really might want to check it out sometime. And in fact, there's a whole section we haven't even touched today, and that you said there's like canoe rentals or something available on the other side.
Right, down the road along the river, there's another whole section where you can get canoe and boat and I guess water devices of some kind rental. But
most people call those boats.
Well, I said boats, but I think there's other stuff too, so water devices suffice.
Water devices it is.
Water devices. Anyway, I'm going to come back and do that when it's a little bit warmer than 50 degrees out. So we'll try to come back at some other time. But if it looks like this is a nice river and a nice area, so I definitely would recommend coming and checking all that out. But we'll see you in a little bit down the road at the next park. Welcome to Pontiac Lake State Recreation Area. It's the third park on our trip today, and we're excited to go check it out. This is another park that is right off the main road, so it is very, very noisy, but we're looking forward to getting in and finding some trails and finding some nature and peace and quiet.
The Pontiac Lake Recreation Area is about 3,700 acres, and it is spread out in terms of the different areas of things to see and do. So we are now in the day use area down here in the corner of the park, and that's one area where you have the beach, and there are a ton of grills. We lost track of the number of grills trying to keep track of them. I think you can look in one small area and you can easily count to 30, and then you realize they just keep going and going. So this is clearly a day use area that gets a lot of use in the summertime when the weather is nice out here, because they have plenty of parking and grills and space for everybody. Then we have different areas within this recreation area that are things like you have the modern campground, you have an equestrian campground, there is an RC airfield, there is a group campground, and all of this within the 3,700 acres is looped by a mountain bike trail that you can also use for hiking, but it's a 10-mile loop all the way around. And then there are equestrian trails and there are just hiking trails for people scattered throughout as well. So we're not going to hit these trails today, but there are a lot of them here. The thing about this park in particular, and it's similar, I suppose, to a lot what we're seeing in Southeast Michigan, is because things are sectioned off where you can't get to them directly without driving, anything you're going to do is going to take you a little extra time compared to what you might be used to, but there is a lot to do here. In addition to an equestrian campground at Pontiac Lake, there is a modern campground, and we had hoped to drive in and show it to you, but as you can see, the gates are closed. The campground is somewhere over there. It's too far for us to walk in really and really do anything with it. It really raises the point, though, that if there's one thing I've learned by doing this project is that there isn't really any consistency for what the DNR means when it says open or closed for the season. There are parks that open at different times in April. There are parks that open in different times of May. So if you are going to a campground in one of the state parks, make sure you jump onto the reservation system and see if the parks are open and reservations are available. You don't always need reservations early in the season. There's going to be plenty of spots for you, but you may not know that the campground is open or closed until you get there. So always check online before you make that trip. So that wraps up park number 3 for the day, Pontiac Recreation Area. We have one more park left, and that is Dodge number 4, which I didn't realize when we started the day that Dodge number 4 was going to be the 4th park, but sometimes things just work out. It's a really small park, there's not much to see there, but it has an interesting history. So come on, let's go check it out. Welcome to Dodge number 4 State Park. It's about 139 acres in this park. There's about a mile of that is a beach on Cass Lake, and we're gonna find out what else is here when we head on in. Dodge number 4 is the smallest state park we're visiting today, and you're essentially seeing it. There's no trails, there's no campground. It is essentially a day use park. There is a mile of shoreline. I think I said originally there was a mile of beach. There's a mile of shoreline on Cass Lake. Some of that is a beach. But this is a nice area just to come out, and it seems like there's a lot of grills. There's plenty of grass space here for people to hang out. You do have the beach. There's restroom facilities for when you're here during the day. They're closed right now because it's not in season. But Dodge number 4, and there's a history to that, and I'm gonna let Jessie tell you that because she did all the research on it.
The land, which encompasses Dodge number 4 State Park, was donated to the state of Michigan by the Dodge Brothers Corporation in 1922. It was actually part of 11 different parcels of land that they were donating, with the stipulation that they all be kept for the public as part of a park system. 11 parks, totaling more than 600 acres in all, were presented to the state in memory of the late brothers and industrialists John F. and Horace E. Dodge, who founded the Dodge Automobile Company. We found it fitting that we started our day with land that was donated by the Ford family, and we're ending it with the Dodge family. Part of the reason that these parks became such a big deal was that at the time, overcrowded beaches and picnic grounds, along with increased auto ownership, promoted travel to the parks. And conditions in Oakland County, just outside the Detroit area, were especially dire. It was just overcrowded, and now that people had automobiles, they could just drive anywhere. So therefore, they wanted to create some of these state parks that were accessible to everybody and that alleviated some of that crowding. Out of the original 11 parks that were donated, it appears from what we can tell that Dodge number 4 is the only one officially left under state control. Most of the other ones have either been turned over to the counties or local cities, or they have been absorbed into other recreation areas. But I think it's really cool that, as part of the history, we've been able to keep some of that history here and retain it for future generations.
So Dodge number 4 is one of the smaller state parks, but it seems to be a popular place in season. I mean, look at the number of picnic tables that are lined up in the parking lot waiting for the picnic season to begin. We're actually on top of a hill here at Dodge number 4. There's a couple different areas you can walk to, and this is kind of a picnic area and play area where people can kind of hang out. So small, but a nice park overall.
Yeah, and actually there's been a lot of cars coming in and out today and people walking along the shoreline, so definitely I'm guessing this is pretty busy in the summertime. We've had a great day, and I'm glad you were able to come along with us and experience it. I think this was a lot of fun to kind of, like we said before, start with Ford and end with Dodge, and realize how much of, especially Southeast Michigan, how much of it was kind of based around the auto industry and just the innovation and the technology and everything that came with it, and how that shaped our history. What I find cool is, for all the money that was made off the auto industry, they were able to take that money and turn it back over to the state of Michigan to benefit future generations. And I think we've seen that today and in our travels throughout the state park system, that most of this wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for those, auto pioneers.
Yeah, it's outstanding that they had the foresight to sort of, they got the land for themselves to begin with, but then the families decided that it needed to stay undeveloped. It needed to go to the state so people could enjoy it for generations to come. And I'm really thankful that the Dodge family, the Ford family, and all the others that have been involved in this kind of thing made that move and did that for those of us who live in Michigan and those of you who want to visit.
So that's going to wrap up our day today. We are headed over to Ari's sister's house for dinner, and she said there's supposed to be a great meal coming, so we're looking forward to that. So we're going to say goodbye for now, but we will see you next time on our next trek.
Keep on trekking. We'll see you out there.
What are you doing?
Are you enjoying your dinner?
That's just wrong.
No, not at all. It's awful.
That's just wrong.